Hi guys, it's Tuesday. Sorry there was no video yesterday. Like I said, I was shooting a Lady Bits. I did that on the Sunday, and by the time that was done, I don't know if you guys saw the preview picture on Twitter, but once that was done, I was just like, video? No, not happening. Hi, Delilah. Delilah's here. Yeah, then this article, this sort of not article story, this sort of blockbuster story showed up. I'll get it. Wow, great preparation. And I thought, based on last week, I should follow this up and talk about it. I don't know if you've been following the news, but Asia, I believe her name is pronounced Asia Argento, who is one of the first people to accuse Harvey Weinstein and one of the big names of the hashtag MeToo movement, has been accused through the New York Times thanks to anonymous documents that were sent to them via secure server. Apparently, they don't even know who sent them to them, but they verified the documents. She sexually assaulted a co-star that played her son in a movie when he was just 17 years old in the state of California when age of consent is 18. So, this blew up the internet for obvious reasons. And, when I talked to people yesterday morning, guys, there was this disbelief that the Me Too movement would treat the accusations of a young man to a woman equally to the accusations of a woman to a man. And I got one of them when I tweeted the story. I got one guy, not a woman, not a hashtag MeTooer, a guy. I checked his profile. Could be a troll. I don't know. There's no way to verify people on Twitter unless you're a dreaded blue check like me. But his profile said that he was, ex-military and all this stuff. People can say whatever they want on Twitter. But he said, I wish that a hot chick, exact word, would sexually assault me and then pay me a bunch of money. $380,000 was the settlement. That was the paperwork that was sent to the New York Times. And so some people are being jerks, but the movement itself is being consistent in its Believe Survivors mandate. Here, I'll show you. Tarana Burke, this paragraph here, Tarana Burke, who is essentially the woman who came up with the phrase Me Too. It wasn't Alyssa Milano, like some people think. It was Tarana Burke. This is her statement. People will use these recent news stories to try and discredit this movement. Don't let that happen. This is what movement is about. It's not a spectator sport. It is people generated. We get to say this isn't what this movement is about. And we won't shift the culture unless we get serious about shifting these false narratives. She said more than this. I don't know why they truncated her tweets, but it's enough for you. She's not saying it didn't happen. She's not saying the guy is lying. She said, we get basically what she's saying in social justice speak is we get to change. We get to evolve and change this movement, meaning, we get to let men in too. Now, I don't know why she'd even have to say it since Anthony Rapp was one of the first accusers. People forget. Kevin Spacey. Remember him? There was just a story about how Billionaire Boys Club, his most recent movie, only made it was something sad, like $126 or something like that in theaters. Huge flop because of him. Remember him? His accuser was a younger man, Anthony Rapp, the guy from Star Trek Discovery. He was also quite young when Spacey abused him. So this idea that the Me Too movement is only about women, that's confusing it with the Time's Up movement, which is a connected but separate thing. There's never been any claim that, remember the guy that accused George Takei? His story has not held up to scrutiny, but remember that? Yeah, a man. Men have been involved in Me Too from the beginning, but this narrative has formed that, oh, now men have to protect themselves from false accusations, as if women don't get falsely accused, and this is specifically a thing that women do to men, even though men have accused men, and men have now accused women, and, but the stereotypes are strong. The stereotypes are strong, and this is why I'm covering this. Now, let's see. What about Rose McGowan, one of the most militant, outspoken participants in Me Too? Well, she was even stronger. There's no cut and dried here. Here we are. You see her tweet right there. I got to know Asia Argento 10 months ago. Our commonality is the shared pain of being assaulted by Harvey Weinstein. My heart is broken. I will continue my work on behalf of victims everywhere. That is pretty much, I believe the kid. There's no way around it. They are believing this kid. For the record, I believe this kid. I believe Jimmy Bennett. There are pictures from the day she did it. I believe him. And this isn't one of these things where it's a question of consent, whether he consented or not. He was 17. If the sex happened, it's assault. And, there's been discussions online about the different cultural norms in Europe, especially Italy, where Asia Argento is from, versus, I do not buy that. I thought of that for a moment and then went, nope. When you are in a country, when you are in a state, when it comes to consent laws, you are responsible for knowing what the consent laws are in that state. She's an actress in California. It's not like she was suddenly in Idaho and didn't know what to do. If you're going to work essentially in the Hollywood star system, you should know what the laws are involving sex in California if you're gonna hook up with the guy who played your kid when he was 7. And I'm saying hook up by, this is probably what was going through her mind. Not that I believe it was just a hookup. I don't. You don't, just, I do not get what goes through people. There is no way she didn't know he was only 17. No way. And I don't get it, but then I have to tell myself, no, you do get it. It's the whole Mrs. Robinson, oh, gee, isn't he so lucky? He's not lucky. He's not lucky. This is a traumatic event, and this is something, it's interesting. There's a bit of this in the next Lady Bits. Ironic. I'm telling you this now because I shot it before this story broke. I'm like, shit, this is kind of timely. But it's not, he's not lucky. This isn't cool. He said that afterwards it started feeling like really wrong, like really not good. He was uncomfortable. He felt, and that's believable. For a lot of survivors, that you kind of freeze when it's happening, and then afterwards it's like, which isn't, that used to be a problem with reporting, because normally when you're reporting crimes, it's if the emotions don't line up, if they seem to be out of order, or they're not feeling something at the time, that it was considered a mark of deception. But that was when we believed in a fight or flight response. It's now freeze, fight, or flight. We know that. A lot of people just freeze. And at that point, it's just it's an adrenaline response. All you're kind of feeling is nothing. And I'm sure this poor kid probably felt a bit of, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, there's some pressure on young men of that age, especially in Hollywood, especially, you know what I'm talking about, right? So I think maybe he might have, and this is just total speculation based on stories I've heard from other people, might have tried to be into it, but afterwards he's like, no, that wasn't good. That was not good. And this is where we get into as Tarana Burke talks about, power structures and systems and all that stuff. And this is why age of consent exists. That the older person who is more experienced, who should know better, who has more worldliness, should be the one to put the brakes on this sort of sexual assault, no matter who initiates it. In this case, he claims she initiates it. No reason to not believe him. But you know, did I say that right? There is reason to believe him. He seems credible. I mean, her lawyers didn't dispute it. Now we don't know why, but there was no gag order. Apparently you can't in these sorts of settlements in California. In New York you can, in California you can't. This doesn't matter. I just wanted to not make it sound like I don't believe him. I want to be clear that I think his accusations are credible just because there are freaking pictures from the day. We don't have to determine there was a crime to say it was inappropriate, right? The picture, you know, that's what brought down Al Franken. Pictures. So this one's pretty cut and dried in terms of whether or not something happened. But, you know, where was I going with this before I got all freaked out that people were going to jump all over me for one thing? This is a problem with talking about this. But she should have known better. She should have known better, and she should have stopped it. The responsibility was on her as the grown-up. Why? Because teenagers aren't totally self-actualized at that age. And especially when it's somebody who played his mom in a movie that was, you know, a maternal figure in that way, someone he probably looked up to. That's an even bigger problem. That's an even bigger violation of trust. And in some countries, they're actually a higher age of consent if you are one of those authority figures like a teacher. And that's that way for a reason. Because people, when they're under a certain age, because they're not self-actualized, they try to please authority figures like parents, like teachers, like a much more famous co-star. And so they don't make the choices that an adult would in that situation. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, adults would say no in that situation. Some people freeze up and just don't fight. But in this case, he was 17, and we know psychologically that he's not in a position to say no, really, to somebody who he does look up to, who is sort of an authority figure. He's going to try to please her. We know this. This is why these laws exist. And the fact that this is so cut and dried was probably one why the New York Times ran with it, because you got to be sure if you're going to take down like a figurehead of a movement. But also, I think some people are going to not let go of their preconceptions about what's going on here, and they're going to continue to retreat into fear and cut some people off. Because this whole thing of, oh, men can't trust women, men have to protect themselves against women so they won't be accused because the accusation is enough to destroy you. Asia Argento is done. People believe Jimmy Bennett. People believe him. They think she did it. She's not going to get a day in court, likely. And even if she did, she probably did something. I mean, you've heard, this is why I was so strident with, do I believe him? Yep, I believe him. She's done. She's done. She will be under a cloud like this. Now, she could turn around and start talking about the cycle of victimization and all this stuff and possibly scrape a little bit out, but she just went from, you know, the archetypical victim, you know, Little Red Riding Hood being preyed on by the big bad wolf, to Mary Kay Letourneau. I mean, God, is that too dated a reference? But does this mean that women are just supposed to avoid men for fear of being accused? Well, and this got me thinking. a light bulb came on over my head that didn't come to mind last week because I really didn't think it was relevant at that time. Precisely because this story about, Fortnite players, you're not even in the same space. That was my point at the time. But there is this thing that women are programmed from a very young age about rape avoidance, about sexual assault avoidance, and do this so you don't get raped. Do this so you don't get raped. We are trained to believe that anytime you are alone with a man, there is an element of risk, and you have to sort of do this pre-screening to be alone with a guy so you don't get raped. Now, we are sort of evening the scales here, where now men have sort of a fear of don't be alone with a woman because you might get accused. Now, when you actually think about what's worse, what's more life-destroying, tough to tell, isn't it? And this is unfortunately the uncanny valley of equality that has to happen sort of sometimes in these civil movements. And I'm not saying I'm happy it's happening. I would prefer that it doesn't, but that's an unpopular thing to say right now because people want change and they want it now. Well, when rapid changes happen, this is what happens. Everyone gets scared because the paradigm changes so quickly. And so we get sort of this equality of now everybody has to be afraid instead of just one group being afraid or multiple groups being afraid and this one group not having to think about it. And this is what we talk about loss of privilege, a big P word, just so you're aware of what the term is. Loss of privilege basically means now you have to think about stuff you didn't have to think about before because you were privileged. So now women are constantly schooled in basically rape avoidance. Now men are being schooled in rape accusation avoidance. And now we have this thing where women have to worry now about rape avoidance and rape accusation avoidance. So it's still not totally level because we still don't train men not to get sexually assaulted, even though the rates of that crime against men are probably a lot higher than reported. More on that in the episode of Lady Bits. I get into that. But eventually we want to get to a place. Because we have two alternatives now. Everybody just be afraid of it, of everybody of the opposite sex. And we know that, men assault men and women assault women. And it's heteronormative nonsense, the idea that you have to fear the opposite sex more than you fear your own. Because, the highest statistic is that 1 in 10 men commit sexual assault. Well, that means 9 in 10 men don't. And we can either choose to be afraid of each other forever, which means no one's ever going to be alone and no one's ever going to get together and the species will die out. Or we can start being more sane and less reactive about this stuff and recognize that back in the day, before MeToo and before this, you can't get accused, women were expected to overcome their fear somehow and give individual guys a chance. Guys had a very bad reaction to this all men are potential rapists thing, and rightly so, because, if you're not, that's a crappy guilt by association, right? Well, women want the same thing. We don't want the guilt by association because a minority of us falsely accuse men for attention or working through trauma or whatever. Okay, we want the same benefit of doubt. And it isn't just so we can get consensually laid. It's so we can get in the meetings and, get the job and get opportunities at work. Because if nobody wants to be alone with a woman in a room, but you can be alone with a man, well, there's a lot more opportunities for advancement because a guy is in the room. if men are expecting women to be brave in this heteronormative paradigm, I don't think it's too much to ask men for the same bravery when it comes to being one-on-one with a woman in a work environment. Or like I said, if you can't take that step right away, chaperone your meetings. Have somebody else in there, but don't just deny the woman the meeting. Don't just deny the woman the streaming opportunity. Don't be so scared. The only way we're going to get to the world, the better world we all want, is with bravery. And the response to Me Too shouldn't be you first. You be brave first. No. It's up to all of us to be brave and step forward and overcome our fears. The first time I was at E3 alone, I was shitting fucking bricks because it's LA and the hotels are not in the nicest part of town. And you hear these horror stories about various muggings and things like that happen in LA. And it was very funny because people, when I asked for directions to places, they're like, well, you can take a cab, but you can also take the metro. It's safe. That was the first thing they said. It's safe. You have to tell me it's safe? Maybe it's not so safe. Why did you feel the need to tell me it was safe? And then, this is the funniest part of this whole story. I got back to my, accredited E3 hotel the first night after being okay. Didn't get pulled into an alley and murdered, didn't get mugged, didn't have my cell phone stolen, mission freaking accomplished, because it wasn't the daytime stuff, it was the parties at night that completely freaked me out. Not because I thought gamers are horrible. In the convention center, I felt completely safe. It was navigating the streets of LA on my own at night. That's what freaked me out. And I go into my hotel room, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a figure of a man in a mohawk and a spiked leather jacket in my bathroom. And I completely freaked out, and I turned on the light. And it was a mirror takeover ad for Sunset Overdrive, a game I happen to like very much. I played it anyway. But they put this, basically the face was cut out. So in the dark, I turned around, and so my own face reflected back. So I saw a face and then a mohawk, and I went the next day, and I said to the Xbox people, this is what happened. What were you thinking? I mean, the year degree put deodorant in everybody's room. That was funny. But what were you thinking putting the image of a person in a person's hotel room without telling them? And I remember the marketing guy went, oh yeah, that was bad. Because they'd done it in the bathrooms in the convention center before, but that's during the day. You walk into the bathroom, it's a public bathroom, you expect other people to be there. When you go back to your darkened hotel room at night alone, true story. 100% true story. I actually saved the decal because it was just so... E3 does, this marketing campaign did not consider, and I apparently it's not just women. A couple of guys told me after the fact, when I told them the story, they were like, yeah, that happened to me and that freaked me out too. It's not just you. Dumb marketing. But if we're supposed to overcome fears like that, you're afraid of an accusation? Okay, it can ruin your career. Yeah. But you can get a new career. You can't get another life. You can't get another limb if it's damaged. You can't get your eye back if it's gouged out. The threat of violence is a much more visceral fear than you could ruin my career. And I'm not saying ruining your career is easy to overcome. Not at all. I'm just saying think about the other side. And when this came up last week, that's all I was asking for, and I didn't get it from a lot of people. Now, some of those people followed a lot of MRA channels and alt-right furry channels. Thanks for the sleuths that caught that. So they were just trolling. But other people, I was really surprised. The other people that had that strong visceral reaction weren't open to hearing it. So hopefully in this different context where now it's a woman on the hook and you're sympathizing with the victim, If you want women to give you a chance because you're a nice guy and you're not going to hurt them, then you have to extend the same courtesy for women who, get to know and set your limits and your boundaries, and all that's really good. You don't have to hook up with a person the first time you meet them, like first date, let's fuck. No, it doesn't have to be that way. Okay, get some time to get to know somebody. Even at work, get some time to get to know somebody, but give them that chance because you want that chance. And that's why I'm very glad that Jimmy Bennett took a big, brave step, because I'm sure he didn't know what the response was going to be. I don't even know if this was consensual for him. I'm a bit concerned that this is going to re-traumatize the guy, because, oh my God, if somebody just leaked his court papers and he didn't know this was coming, I certainly hope the New York Times, through his lawyers, warned this kid, because holy crap, that's a whole other thing that I am not cool about. People have to have the right to come forward and tell their stories, not have stories told for them. But I do think it's good that we're finally talking about the realities of sexual assault of men. I think that's really important, because I think it's going to be easier for everybody to talk about it if it's not a thing that only or predominantly happens to women. Cool? Cool. All right. Thanks for watching. Oh, crap. This is so inappropriate. I hate doing this stuff, but help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Yeah, that was really awkward but I have to do it. You have to ask. Give people the chance to support, right? I'm taking my own advice. Shilling this channel always freaks me out. It always feels gross, but I know I have to do it. I've been told over and over and over again, you have to promote this stuff. You have to. Freaks me out, but I do it. Awkward.